Welcome to week 7 here at George Washington University. PSSL 6240, Political Violence and Terrorism. So a couple of just announcements. February 29th, so that is a week from this Thursday, congressional brief on the January 6th attack. So as I mentioned in week 1, I usually do a bunch of Zoom sessions or WebEx sessions for the class where you would brief. Because we have such a small class, there's only going to be one. You will all be in a group. You will all answer questions as if you are the head of Capitol Police, the head of FBI, and the head of Homeland Security. And the fourth person can kind of float among all three and explain what happened on January 6th. Expect an adversarial kind of briefing or kind of questions, just like a congressional hearing. Why did it go wrong? What were the failures? So I expect that February 29th. I also expect on February 29th, so I don't expect like a PowerPoint presentation, but I expect you to do a 2-page memo that you can give before me, no more than 2 pages, that anticipate potential questions and answers as if you're prepping someone to brief in front of Congress. So if you're doing that, you usually give a 2-page, very tight memo, bullet points, questions and bullet point answers. And I just want to see that ahead of time, just to kind of see where your logic is and what you think the session will be. But I'll send the Zoom link next week, and I think we'll have a lot of fun. I should have just said this at the beginning. Week 8 gives a lot of the material for this, so watch the Week 8 lecture sooner rather than later. And you'll see some key questions that I'll ask in that lecture that will probably be asked in the congressional hearing. So it'll be lots of fun. I look forward to it. Everyone will get the same grade, and it'll be a great way to end the class. So paper 2, again, good job overall. Again, just a little bit need to be more specific on some of the issues. Some of you did the electric grid. And a lot of you characterized the problem and said what could be the problem. That's all fine, but need to get down to the nitty-gritty. How does a bullet hit a substation and cause a cascading effect? How can ricin cause mass casualties, or can it not cause mass casualties? And you need to get into the science. There is certain castor bean production for ricin. There are certain issues with sarin that make it much harder to employ in New York, Vice, and Syria. Binary versus unitary. Those are the kind of questions we're looking for in this brief. So get into that specifics. And then when I say drive a playbook, particularly the substation issue, but the other ones, the threat assessment you produce, the intelligence you produce, will drive certain tactics. So if you say that a substation is attacked, or there's a threat against substations, you have to also put enough intel so they can say, okay, here are the priority substations. Here is one that are going to have cascading effects. These are ones that might be impacted during right-wing or targets for right-wing radicals. And you have to rack and stack those so the playbook can increase force protection levels or threat levels against those certain areas. Same with sarin, or same with the WMD. If we're in a higher WMD area, we don't guard everything. We don't check every port, check every container. But if you recommend an increased threat level, then there are certain playbooks, certain measures that get implemented immediately. So again, I didn't expect you maybe to get into that level of specificity for this paper, but just think about that going forward, whether you're talking about WMD protection, biothreat, or the critical infrastructure that many of you highlighted. So speaking of threats, good discussions for week 6. Questions to ask. Are we more secure since 9/11? Do the bureaucracy that we've put in, whether it's the National Counterterrorism Center, Homeland Security, the wars we fought, have they made us more secure? Is it worth it? It goes back to the questions we asked in the first days of this class. Again, I will let you answer. I would probably argue we are more secure, but how much, we spent a lot of money doing it. What point do we reach diminishing returns? What do you do? Bin Laden determined to attack in the U.S. As I mentioned, there's playbooks. Well, let me back up. That's a very vague intelligence assessment. George Bush gets blamed for a lot, but I don't think he could have really made a decision based on this. But if there was something against commercial aviation, is there something else? Like, what do you do? How do you respond to that? How does that drive certain actions, like intelligence is always supposed to do, that can mitigate the threat? So think about that. If you're the guy briefing Bin Laden determined to attack in the U.S., the next question that you should anticipate is, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Was 9/11 an intelligence failure? I brought this up in the lecture. You can make the argument it was an intelligence failure. A lot of, it's a free country. We want people to come to our country. Something like this is bound to happen. We're not Russia or China. You can make that argument. It's actually not a invalid argument, but there is something to say that we had information on two of the hijackers. We knew they were communicating with known Bin Laden safe house. They were on a watch list, yet they still were able to get through our visa program. They still were able to be here without a intrusive investigation. That is probably the intelligence failure surrounding 9/11, and the NSA documentary and some of the other papers that you read cover that in detail. Shifting to the post 9/11, and this is a question it's just coming up today. If you didn't see the news, the New Hampshire shooter, the Maine shooter, who was an Army reservist, there's video of him now looking to be more radical, or obviously expressing mental health issues. Yet we weren't able to stop it. Why? What point does radicalization deserve further scrutiny? What point do we look? At what point do we do certain things? Detain, require mental health evaluation, forbid from purchasing firearms. At what point, when they go down the radicalization cycle, should they be monitored further, and then certain actions be taken? And I'll remind you, Nidal Hassan, for all the warnings that you all saw in the documentaries or in the papers, he didn't commit a crime or do anything that could have gotten detained until he opened fire at that soldier readiness processing center. Could that have been stopped? Again, in a free country. Again, I'll let you decide. And that's something to consider as we talk about the shooting in Maine, as we talk about the January 6th attack, where we could look back and see all this social media and all this hostile intent. But did they rise to a level where they should be detained, forced into mental health evaluation, forbidden from purchasing weapons? I'll let you decide. Do we have the appropriate funding, structures, and personnel? Before you say we don't have enough people, which some people say, not enough FBI agents, not enough people looking at this, we've spent billions, trillions, depending on how you count it, on counterterrorism since 9/11. And if you're going to ask for more, you got to have a pretty good justification. And then finally, should we just accept this? And I alluded to this earlier. We live in a free country. We live in a country that oftentimes fetishizes guns. Should we just expect low-level attacks? The Fort Hoods and the Orlando shooter and others, where there isn't a widespread conspiracy, and just say, that's the cost of being in this society. Again, I'll let you decide, but if you're going to say that and you're in front of the congressional committee, you better have your language very tight and your research very clear on why you think that's true. Okay, so week 7, we're going to look at domestic terrorism, factors led to the rise of ISIS in the U.S., and the factors that have led to right-wing extremism to now be the most common modality of terrorism that we at least see domestically. What are the factors that have led to the rise? Are there ways to stop it? And think through, again, this radicalization cycle of when people become radicalized and what can be done to stop it. So I look forward to not this coming week, but the following week, the congressional January 6th congressional hearing. If there's any questions or issues, please let me know.